Enjoy your flight.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. One of the big asks that I had coming into command was I wanted to be more communicative. I wanted us to be able to know what we're doing from one end of the wing to the other. So one of the ways that we do that is by reaching out to people through the media and communication, or MAC, area. So really appreciate the training that we're going to go through tonight. But I do ask that everybody remember that we are a organization that is known um, by some to be professional and by some not to be. And so that's where this really does kind of come in. So if something that you hear rankles, or says, well, that's not the way we've done it. Understand we're trying to do it all the same way, kind of around one Civil Air Patrol. And the marketing and branding is very, very important. So these are things that we need to do by regulation, but also will benefit us. And so the intent is not to overburden or to add any burden, but actually to allow us to communicate better. So with that being said, as you can tell, I'm here and going through the same training as well. So we're all in it together, and I definitely look forward to not only what we're learning here, but on everything that we're doing across the wing. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Colonel Peace.
All right. So next time we do a training, do not be surprised if I start the slides off with "We're all in it together" from High School Musical. I have kids that age, so I remember that well. But I wanted to say that I'm grateful for everyone who's joining this training. I know that there's also an encampment parent meeting going on this evening, and some of you were able to attend that in the past, or you've been to encampment, and so you're very familiar. And wanted to thank you for all of the time it takes to be a volunteer in Civil Air Patrol, and especially for those of you who are, you might be squadron commanders, you might be deputy commanders, you might be the PAOs, and you might just be going, I don't even know what to do with this thing called social media. And I know that that can be very overwhelming if it's not in your wheelhouse. So thank you for being willing to learn, and just for joining us. A quick background about who I am. Other than the Georgia Wing Public Affairs Officer, I do this for a full-time job. I do this for the federal government, and have been for a few years. Prior to the current department that I work for, I used to work for the Navy, and prior to that, I worked for the Army, and before that, I worked for Congress, and before that, I was a journalist. And so I've worked in radio, print, and I was a TV news anchor. And many years ago, having nothing to do with public affairs, before that, I served for a short amount of time in the Air Force. So I have been around the military as a whole, and I have been in public affairs for a very long time. And so as we're going through these trainings, some of the information I'm going to give you comes from the DoD side. And then some of it, well, a lot of it, most of it's going to come from Civil Air Patrol regulation and guidelines, the pamphlets. And then some of it comes from the soon to receive memo once it is finished and Colonel Willis has read it and changed it and edited it and signed it. Then you will also get that as well. So we are doing our best to communicate as much as possible the best practices for you. And then the absolute, like, here's what you should do and here's what you should definitely probably not do. So I say probably, but really just not do. So we're going to go through some best practices, and tonight we'll go through some of those examples. I am not trying to call out any particular squadron, good or bad. It just, as we see things, sometimes we take note. On a couple photos, I have put shapes over cadet faces because it's definitely not their fault. But on the other hand, they are good examples of things that definitely went public and recently. And, so we can all discuss as a team about what is a great idea and what's not. This training will be on a private YouTube link on the Georgia Wing YouTube that will go up a little later, and we'll get that link sent out to everyone if you want to refer back to it. So let me Just remember how to share the screen. And thanks for being patient. We swapped instructors about an hour ago, so it's gonna take me just a second to pull up the slides that we have. There's not too many. I will get you out of here within an hour. Okay, nobody can see anything yet, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep, now I got it.
Now, all right, perfect. It is really hard, especially at my age, to go back and forth between Teams and Zoom and Google and trying to remember all the different buttons. So tonight specifically, we want to go over what should you post on social media and what should you absolutely not be posting on social media. So we're going to jump straight into some social media guidelines and some ideas to help you get started. One of the great things to start with is being a good listener. So when you are a good listener, that means that you are listening to the cadets, you're listening to your volunteers, and you're listening to the public, because all of those are your audience. Granted, we tend to choose certain platforms for cadets like Instagram and YouTube Shorts. I got to tell you, kids are not on Facebook. They're just not. They haven't been for a while, and it's their parents' fault, like me, it's my fault, because at one point they started out on Facebook and then all the parents joined and they said, yeah, I don't really want to be there with my parents. And then they went to Instagram and then we went to Instagram, and now some kids are leaving Instagram and they're over at TikTok, and we can't use TikTok. But we can use some of the TikTok examples and we can use those on Instagram and YouTube. So I personally do not have TikTok. I am not a TikTok fan, but you better believe kids are on there. And so they are spending a significant amount of time on there, actually. So we have to listen to the cadets and their parents and the audience and figure out what it is that they are looking for. Our goal is to be positive and encouraging. And I know that there are some things, like particularly on X, formerly known as Twitter, where that is a platform where if you are less positive and encouraging, it's probably going to get more engagement, but that's not a great idea for our organization. So we're not going to do that. We want to make sure that we are showing gratitude toward those who are promoting CAP and who are in CAP. This is social media is a great place to hold conversations and to reply. So, we got to make sure that we're replying to good comments, and then remembering that some things are going to be shared, retweeted, whether we like it or not. And therefore, it can be seen as an endorsement, whether we like it or not. I'll give you an example. This also goes over into the don't column on things don't share. We have really great communities that are very supportive of us. And we fall in this difficult situation where we are both a nonprofit and we are an auxiliary of the Air Force with federal funding. So therefore, when we are sharing some of our community events from organizations that the federal government would not share because it is an implied endorsement, then it's something CAP has to really stop and think about. Should we really be sharing that nonprofit post or something from a church organization or something from a local business? Local businesses are a great example. It is one thing to say, thank you so much for your support or your donation, if your donation was approved by the Georgia wing and headquarters before you accepted it. So it's one thing to thank them, but to share their posts will come across as an endorsement. And so we have to be extremely careful with that. We don't talk politics. We don't talk religion. However, I do try to share as many holidays as possible. And I try to be understanding of the fact that other people celebrate different holidays than I do. And some don't celebrate holidays that I celebrate. So I try to be very diverse thinking and understanding of that. So I do see a difference between religion and holiday. Not everyone does. And we are doing our best to be very understanding of all of it. So I said businesses, sports. I really like Taylor Swift. but I'm probably not going to post about her or her boyfriend's team because it just, I mean, what's the point, really? Other nonprofits or charities, those are just not things that really need to go on CAP. Things we don't do, we aren't going to be snarky, and we're definitely not going to show when we get our feelings hurt. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes people say really mean things. And even though I am a firm believer in don't feed troll, sometimes even I am like, I can't believe you just attacked that really great person in CAP in your comment. That was really unnecessary. One thing you will also find is that it is really difficult. I like to hide comments, not necessarily delete comments that are just rude, because in the DoD world, we're not supposed to delete those comments. And I know that CAP is not necessarily in the DoD world. So I try to find that good line and balance of, you know, when are we being really sensitive and when are we taking away free speech versus when is this just really crossing a line? So things to think about, use your best judgment, but whatever you do, don't post someone else's material without asking permission. So those are some guidelines. Any questions on this first portion? If not, I have more do's and don'ts. Things you should definitely do. Use hashtags. Hashtags work really, really well on Instagram. Hold on. See if we can get rid of that feedback. I think it may have gone away. Hashtags work great on Instagram. They work decently on YouTube. They are okay on Facebook. I personally, I'm not using our X account. I just haven't found it to be very, very beneficial for us. We don't get any engagement on it. And I haven't found parents or cadets to be on there lately. So I haven't stressed over it. You know, lack of resources is a real thing. And by resources, I mean human capital. So I have chosen where I can spend my time and my effort, but Twitter is an example of a place where hashtags were working pretty well. But use hashtags, and Civil Air Patrol has some in particular that they really like to use, specifically Civil Air Patrol, CAP Life, CAP Cadet. They are big fans of that. I am a huge fan of Georgia Wing CAP. So that is definitely one that we could all be using. Make sure that you are linking your Facebook and Instagram accounts on the business suite. If you need to know how to do that, you can reach out to me or Lieutenant Holberton, and we will jump on a call with you and have you share your screen, and we will show you how. Yes, Instagram and Facebook, they're two different platforms. Content that works well on one does not always work well on the other. But because we are very limited in resources, specifically volunteers, I link my Instagram, all the Instagram and Facebook accounts for CAP throughout the wing. And I will post on one and have it automatically post on the other. Every once in a while, if you see something go out on Facebook at 10 in the morning and it doesn't go on Instagram until 2 in the afternoon, it's because our audience on that particular day is super active on Facebook at 10 a.m., but they're not active until 2 or 4 p.m. on Instagram or vice versa. So sometimes when I've got a little more time, I will try to separate the timing of when those get posted. I can tell you now that actually more parents are on Facebook in the evening, but I post in the morning because Colonel Willis and Colonel Garrett are active in the morning. And sometimes you have to really stop and think, hey, if this is a big post and I don't post it until 7 p.m. at night, people are going to ask me why. Why didn't this go out? They're looking for it. They're waiting for it. Not just Colonel Willis. I think he's pretty understanding of a social media strategy, but you do have people who are looking for it and waiting for it. So knowing that 7 a.m. is almost as active as 7 p.m., I will tend to go for the 7 a.m. just so no one's wondering why. Anyway, link your accounts. It will save you time. It also will really help you when you are registering your social media, because many people will say, I don't know my Instagram password. And you don't have to know your Instagram password when you're registering, if you're registering it through the business suite. If it's all connected, you can just register it with the wing through the business suite and you're all good. Couple other things, cover photos. I like to change out the cover photos at the Georgia wing fairly often. I have found that pictures of cadets flying or planes do really, really well. And so every once in a while, I'll have a really good photo and I will swap out our cover photo and just, put a different one up there and let it get some engagement. I am such a huge fan of stories and reels. I love them so much. And you can tell when Georgia Wing has a cadet helping us with our social media versus when it's me doing it. Because I might post some stories and I might think they're good and I might think they're funny, but I'm also in my mid-40s. When they're really good, it's like an 18-year-old cadet who came up with the idea. So you can really tell, like, oh, yep, she had a really good public affairs cadet with her at the Augusta Air Show, because who else is going to think to put a boop on an F-22? So like they have really great ideas. So getting cadet ideas for your stories and your reels is a wonderful idea. I do not give cadets access, though, to our social media account. I do not give them the password. They are not registered. They do not have access to post whatever they want, nor can they log into our social media accounts. But when I am there, then I will have them come up with the content and give that to us, and we will share it after I've reviewed it. The stories and reels do very well. Cadets really like stories and reels, especially on Instagram. And obviously put captions on your posts. But I'm gonna ask you guys a question. So this is where I need audience involvement on this. And just unmute and chat, because I am looking at the screen with the slides on it, so I may not be able to see you. So just go ahead and chime in. But if you are going to post pictures on your Facebook account of cadets doing TLPs, what do you think the caption that goes on that Facebook should include? Anybody?
Location.
Location's great. Yeah. Preferably the name of the squadron, not the number of the squadron, because our audience is mostly the public and they don't understand squadron numbers. Anything else?
Name of the cadet.
Yeah. Yep. If you don't want to post the name of the cadet, probably don't post the picture at all, because they do sign a marketing and social media waiver when they sign up. Now, if I have a parent who says, please do not post my child on social media, I will not. I will absolutely honor that, even though they do sign that waiver.
Is there an age that we need to be concerned with about whether post them or not?
Not according to the waiver. Nope. When parents sign up their cadets, and that is a hard thing that we discuss very often in CAP, and especially when it comes to things like encampment. I don't like to post things before they happen, minus things you need to sign up for, like encampment. I don't like to post, hey, we're heading to PT this Saturday, meet us at Fowler Park. To me, that's a huge safety issue. Inviting the public to come out where we have 12 and 13-year-old cadets. I don't know everyone's like custody situation. So I'm very mindful of, we should only post things after the fact. And then of course there's, back when I was a journalist, we always said, what about the fire? If you posted a story before it happened saying that it happened and the building was on fire and the event did not happen, you've got a really big problem, right? So I like to post after something happens. But I saw a really great post at a squadron recently, and I won't say which one, but they had the most beautiful pictures. I mean, stunning photography. And they had a really, really great caption. But when I read the caption and I saw the pictures, my brain couldn't connect the two together, because the caption talked about cadet comp, and it talked about practicing for cadet comp, and it talked about practicing drill, right?
Boy. All right,
Oh, we're back. So we had these really great photos, but the caption had absolutely nothing to do with the photos. So it's just something to think about, that when you are posting a photo, your caption needs to closely match what's happening in the picture. Because it was very confusing to read the caption and see the pictures, and they absolutely had nothing to do with each other. So something to think about when you're captioning your posts. Things we can't do. Please do not post anything that has uniform issues. And we all make this mistake. I had some really great photos from the Wing Cadet
Good luck
Comp.
with that. I've seen that from National.
It happens. We all make this mistake. As I was saying, I made this mistake, right? So we had.
Oh, but she can't hear you.
Right.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit mute right there on that one. Okay. It's okay. We all have an opinion too. I have lots of opinions. I have a whole lot of opinions, as Colonel Willis knows. But uniform issues. Cadet Comp, I thought, went really well. And it was really cold. It was February. We were in Middle Georgia, and I had made several of the teams put on a coat because it was very cold, and they were in their short sleeve blues. It was freezing, and I just couldn't have them out there in that weather. I can't remember what it was. It was somewhere in the 40s, I think. And I just couldn't have them out there doing outdoor posting and standard drill in these short sleeve blues with no coats. So I had them all putting on coats, and they went out there, and we got some really great pictures. And those aren't usable now, are they? Because they're out of uniform. Now, we absolutely allow squadrons to have their cadets wearing jackets when it's cold outside. But we also warn squadrons, when you're at Race Across America, you can't. They either need to be, when they're out in public, they need to be in uniform. So they either need to invest in the correct jacket, or they need to be in ABUs where they can wear something under their ABUs where you can't see it. But for Cadet Comp, everyone was required to wear a short sleeve blues shirt. So I made them put on black jackets. And then I had great pictures that I couldn't use. And you know what? I accidentally posted, I want to say 2 pictures, and 2 cadets wearing black jackets, and Major Davidson pointed it out. And I was frustrated. I didn't disagree with him. He was right. I was just frustrated with myself because I'd posted it on the Georgia Wing, and I had to take it down, and I had to repost it. And there were great pictures, and I couldn't use them. That happens. But we really do not want to be the cause of the Air Force saying, we are really tired of seeing uniform regulation issues. And therefore, after however many times it happens, you're the reason that you guys are not wearing the uniforms anymore. Or you're the reason that we have social media taken away, right? We've all heard that rumor too. So don't post uniform issues. And the biggest one that I see is haircuts. It really is. The time I will call most of you, and I will send you messages, and some of you are so tired of hearing from me, and I know it. And the cadets are so tired of hearing they have to get their hair cut, but they do. They just do. So if you have a uniform concern, and you've got the same cadet struggling, showing up every week, and their hair is not in regulation, then I recommend highly that you continue to work on that from a squadron commander level, but you don't take the picture. And certainly don't post the picture. I am not saying ignore public affairs and let them skate by and let them keep going to meetings out of regs. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if somebody's definitely out of regs, please don't take the picture and post it. Colonel Willis, jump in.
Sorry, I was there was an IM of who remembers the burgundy epaulets, and I was pointing to my burgundy epaulet right here behind me, where we went from blue to burgundy to gray.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yep. Okay, so do not ever post implied safety concerns. So if there is a safety issue or it looks like a safety issue, even if it's not, don't post it. And I know we are allowed with Colonel Willis's approval to take firearm safety training. I think it's great, but you can't post it. You cannot ever post a picture of a cadet holding a firearm, shooting a gun. There is a difference between color guard ceremonies and being at the range. And for anybody who's wondering why, there have been a lot of terrible things that have happened across the country in the last many years, and headquarters has said you can't post it. So I won't get into the debate about that. You just can't. Okay. And then comment wars. We've all had it. I like to say don't feed the trolls. But it happens. Before we get into any questions, I was going to show you this really great graphic that I think, it was the Air Force came out with just recently, like about a month or two ago, where they were visually updating, and they also updated some of their regs. And I understand it takes CAP a long time to update their regs after the Air Force does. But I still really liked this graphic because it was a lot more clear about the hair regulations and the nail color regulations. And also because for females in the Air Force, not shaving the side and back of your head is a new thing from my understanding. And so for cadets who do, and I have met female cadets who do, they shave under the top of their hair and they pull it into a ponytail. That takes a while to grow out. And so I just want them to be prepared. So this is a graphic that I have been sharing recently, and I think it's a great one. Go ahead, Colonel Powers.
What if we have a cadet or a senior member, I suppose, that has gotten a waiver for hair, beard, clothing, something along those lines? So they're out of standard regs, but they have a special waiver. What do you do in a case like that?
So I would never hold that against someone. And then for some people, being celebrated on social media is a really great thing. And I would never hold that against them. Now, in the comments, are people going to comment? Absolutely. And in that moment, I would not specifically state an individual cadet or person's waiver, whether it be for medical or religious. I would simply remind commenters in general that there is a process for receiving a waiver. And I understand that it is then implied at that point, but we don't want to comment on any one particular person's personal anything. But it is going to be a question, and you will see it in the comments. Amy Bright, I think, has a question or comment on that as well.
I just have a question in reference to the shaved head for females, because I thought it was brought to my attention like in the last year that females could shave their head.
So I'll take this, Colonel Peace. Colonel Peace mentioned that there is a delta between Civil Air Patrol grooming standards and United States Air Force grooming standards. Currently, underneath 39-1, it does state that there is no minimum length for females. It is a additional update that has just recently been done, which actually instigated this particular graphic, that it was updated. The Air Force, the AFI 36 dash some 4-digit number, I can't remember right this second, but that is the they actually did update that to prohibit the undershave for females. So at this point, per our regulations, you're correct, ma'am, that it is not a prohibited haircut. However, what I would recommend that, and Colonel Peace did mention this, I would recommend that we don't know the exact date that Civil Air Patrol will adopt those Air Force grooming standards, but we will at some point. So I would definitely use that as a conversation with that person about what may become, and so there is also some time to grow that out. Having a daughter who actually prefers that type of haircut, I've been through this, and so it is, we're in a little weird place for that right now. But if we go by these standards, we know that we're going to be good now and going forward. But between now and the update to 39.1, you're technically correct, which of course anybody who knows Futurama is the best type of correct.
Thank you, sir. It's just that the cadet specifically showed me the regulations because I said the same thing you stated, and they came to me and showed me the regulations. So I just wanted to ask the question, so I have.
Well, and that is that goes to the difficulty of this topic. And we've heard somebody mention that there are uniform violations that we can point out in like 15 different national photos that come out. Absolutely. And this is hard, and it goes from place to place. And so please understand, if you're asked to remove or to repost a particular photo, it's not out of malice or anything along those lines. And we're not even saying it's a bad photo. It could be one of the best photos. It's just we're looking at that as objectively as we can.
Sure.
Captain Shake. I think I'm saying that correctly.
Yes, you are, ma'am. I first of all, thank you for taking the time to do this training, and second of all, on the topic of the different regulations from Air Force to CAP, in that situation, which reg would hold, I guess, have higher value? Because there was a situation at a squadron where the cadet was wearing a blue tank top instead of the blue V-neck underneath the blues, and the Air Force regs said tank top was acceptable, but the cap regs said no, and he was basically, his promotion was held because of that. In that situation, which one would have precedent?
I'm going with CAP regs. That is what I'm going by, and I'll let Colonel Willis correct me if I'm wrong, but we're in Civil Air Patrol, and so sometimes good or bad, I'm going by CAP. And but I would also just want to say, as DCCs and squadron commanders, I also want to just remind everyone that empathy goes a long way too. And I'm not trying to, say any squadron commander was incorrect. I don't know the background, and I don't know how many times they'd had the conversation with a cadet, but there's educational moments, and then there's having a really heavy hand.
Yeah, just 100%. This is actually in regulation. It says this, and it's actually in regulation 1-1. Civil Air Patrol regulations are the authoritative first source. They have to, if we are recognizing any other documentation, such as our regulations specifically call out for high adventure activities, that we should reference and use the Girl Scout Activity Handbook. Obviously, that's not a CAP regulation or in any way kind of guidance, but we specifically in the Civil Air Patrol regulation reference it, thus saying that has the authority to speak. So when looking at regulations specifically for things like the Civil Air Patrol uniform, because technically, while we wear the Air Force style uniform, we are not wearing the Air Force uniform, hence why we wear black boots and ABUs, hence why we have a different name tags, hence why different rank insignia. So we have to follow the Civil Air Patrol regulation first. 39.1 trumps everything. And so that actually comes to this hair situation as well, where right now it's actually more lenient. The Civil Air Patrol regulation is more lenient than the Air Force instruction. But yes, in that particular case. Now, that being said, I don't want to get into the specifics on that, but the way that was presented definitely seems to be an interesting view on this. So take that for what it is, but I'll definitely support the commanders and deputy commanders on that. But yeah, for sure, CAP regulations are the authoritative source.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go into a couple of pictures and some like really great examples. I'll say that if there are some not great examples, they're probably not in here. I didn't want anyone to feel really bad. If they're not great examples, you got a call from me already. And we've probably already had a conversation. But some really great examples. And I will just be upfront. If a social media account is not registered with the wing, then those posts are not being shared on the wing social media either. So squadrons that have not registered their social media are not going to have their posts reshared by the wing. All right. So with that said, all right. There was a whole link here, and this is, and I'm sure that there was more that Lieutenant Halberton had in mind that she was going to talk on this slide, but I can tell you what I really, really like about this photo is, one, the composition of the photo. This is a photographer that is just really phenomenal. I wish I had these photography skills, and I do not. Every public affairs person is going to have something that they are just naturally or trained better in. Mine is storytelling and writing. This particular PAO, it is photography. He's a phenomenal photographer. We have some really great photographers across the wing. And in this particular photo, it's not just the lighting and the composition and the blurring of those in the background so you can focus on what's happening right here, but even the expression on the cadet. And I can tell you as a female, do you all know how hard it is to get the name tape and the ribbons to line up? And y'all, it's a pain. And so the whole photo in general, I was like, wow, that's a really great photo for so many reasons. And like to get the hair to lay the way she did, I was like, all right, this is really great. But it's also, there's a lot of actual emotion and expression in this photo as well. And so we're not just saying, hey, the photo's not blurry, that's a plus. We've seen a lot of blurry and low res photos. Sometimes they get shared between a parent who has an Android and they're texting it to you and you have an iPhone. Those almost never come across well on text message, by the way. So if you're wondering why I'm like, I can't see the photo, it's blurry. And if you got it as a text from a parent, that's probably why. And then they just need to come down. But blurry photos, obviously never a good idea. But also the really great photos are the ones that are telling a story in themselves. And then they have a really great matching caption to go with it. Colonel Berg.
Yes, ma'am. I understand the depth of field here highlights the foreground. When would you recommend using the depth of field that would show both as opposed to just the foreground?
So that is a really great photographer question. And I'm going to ask for your grace to let me punt that question until we have our photography class. And the reason I say that is because I have a Marine, he also happens to be my husband, so that's really helpful, who's going to teach a really great virtual photography class for us. And he is just a significantly better photographer than I am and can answer those questions much better than I can. When I look at these photos, I look at them from somebody with a public affairs background who's wondering if I see a story. That's kind of what I'm looking for, but he can answer the actual technical questions for you. Or Lieutenant Merritt can, but he's not here either tonight. So couple of other really great examples out of Peachtree City. Olivia Lohman, I believe, probably took these. You will notice that if a cadet takes a picture, I will name the cadet in the caption. If I take a picture, I take too many pictures, and therefore it would just constantly have my name on it. I don't need the credit. So if you have one public affairs person who's taking the majority of your photos and you don't want to constantly put their rank and name on the caption, that's totally fine. But I sure do like to, whenever possible, share the name of the photographer, and especially when it's a cadet. And that's something you'll see pretty commonly in the DoD world, because they have a lot of photographers that they're sharing photos from. So they can, without it constantly being Elizabeth Peace. So, and then if I did that, you guys would know, like, oh yeah, her photos compared to Olivia Lohman are definitely not very good. And they're not. Olivia is a phenomenal photographer. So these are her photos. Now, Peachtree has a very specific brand. They will almost always post in one setting, one post. You will see that they will have photos in black and white or grayscale and photos in color. And I have seen that on almost every social media post that they do. That is not something at Georgia Wing that I do, but there's nothing wrong with Peachtree City doing that and saying, hey, that's what we like to post. And that is great. Colonel Willis.
Oh, it actually worked. If you actually hold your hand up on the newest version of Zoom, it'll raise your hand for you.
Oh, nice.
Just a social awareness for people of certain ethnic backgrounds. Black and white photos are typically reserved for in reflecting from somebody who has died. So just something to keep in mind. So not saying that it's wrong to put that in there. Just you may get a question. Oh, did that cadet pass? No. Again, we live in a culture, a multi-dimensional culture. So just be aware that does mean things to other people.
Yep, it's a great flag. So some of the other really great things about these photos are not just the color and the lighting and composition and the fact that she got a lot of emotion, and that they're really great photos, but you really can see a story in these photos. The one and only recommendation, and this might be a thing that Peachtree City intentionally doesn't do, and it's fine if they don't, but part of me would love to see a little, like, I like the first couple sentences here in the caption. And then the writer in me would love to see more follow-up. Who got their Mitchell? Who is this person presenting it? Why is that so important to them? So I don't know the relationship between the person presenting these awards and those receiving the awards. And so there might be a story there that can be told. I can see part of the story in the photos, but I don't fully grasp it. So, something to think about is in your caption, you don't have to write an entire press release in your caption, but you could add on a couple sentences and you could add more to the story here. Okay.
There is a question in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Could you read that?
Yes. Is there any policy or reg that addresses tagging individual social media profiles in the photos, specifically cadets?
That's a great question. I do not tag cadets for multiple reasons. The biggest one, I also do not follow cadets from official accounts either, nor do I follow individual senior members. The only tags, and I will tag the Air Force, right? I will tag maybe the F-22 demo team, because they're not a private entity. They're not a business. They're not out fundraising. They're not trying to get money from anyone. So if it's an actual government entity, if it's not, I won't. And if it's an individual person, there's an expectation of privacy. And also there's just the implied endorsement that we just don't need to get into. But also because most accounts are run by senior members. Senior members don't need to be following cadet accounts. And sometimes cadet accounts, I'm not going to judge anyone's parenting. That's up to parents, the conversation they have with their cadets about what their cadets are posting on Instagram. But sometimes those posts are not things that senior members need to be looking at. And so when you follow and tag cadets, you might be following and tagging things that are certainly not appropriate from CAP's regulations when it comes to cadet protection. So I absolutely would not tag an individual, and most certainly would not tag anyone under the age of 18 as well. Some other really great posts here, just as an example of, things to post and things to share from other squadrons. Actually, that one also looks like Cobb over to the left. I think it might be. I'm not totally sure. And then from Effingham. Okay, now we're going to get into some of this is probably not the best idea. So we use this one from an encampment. Actually, I think it was 2 encampments ago with permission. So this is the same cadet in every photo. I can tell you that this is a real struggle. I have a cadet in the program. I live very close to 2 squadrons. I spend a lot of my time with the same set of cadets because I am the chaperone for a cadet competition team. So I'm always at cadet practice with the same 6 cadets. I have the same public affairs cadets who do things like air shows with me. I have a cadet in the program, and I often will have to look at the pictures and say, okay, you have a whole lot of photos and videos from this one squadron, but Georgia Wing can't only post from that one squadron. And it's a real thing I have to look at on the Georgia Wing. It's not that I am not totally biased to the one squadron, maybe sometimes, but it's just that I have a whole lot of photos and video from that particular squadron to use. But then I also have to look at it and go, and I happen to spend a lot of time with my own cadet. He also happens to be very photogenic. So he does a lot. He really is, though. And he does a lot in CAP. He does color guard and he does cadet competition, and he's a first sergeant, and he's going to be staffing an encampment. So I have a lot of photos of him, and I have to make a real effort to go, oh, no, we used him 2 weeks ago. We can't post him again. He's in that photo. I can't use it. There are some squadrons where there are only 4 or 5 active cadets, and half of those cadets are the children of the squadron commander. My recommendation in that moment is that if you go to the Instagram page and it looks like a family photo album, you got to take pictures of anything else, and do not post them or don't use Instagram until you can recruit more cadets. Because if it looks from an outsider perspective that you are doing nothing but promoting your own cadet, then you're going to have a really big problem, and it actually is going to hurt recruitment. So the other thing, though, is these are a bunch of selfies. So if I go to the squadron page and it looks like a squadron commander or deputy commander or a cadet commander, if it looks like their own personal Instagram page, I would not post your selfie for a while, because the social media account should be for the squadron as a whole, not for any particular person in the squadron. So yes, I love to take selfies from the stage when I MC a banquet or whatever it is that I do. Those are really fun. I don't think I ever posted it on Georgia Wing, though. I don't remember. If I did, I buried it in the carousel. I definitely posted it on my own Instagram as the #1 photo, though, because that's really fun for me. But that doesn't mean that's what Georgia Wing should be posting. Georgia Wing is not my own personal Instagram account. So something to think about. Okay, I really wanted to leave the faces of these cadets, because one thing I see a lot, but there's other things to point out on this photo, so I didn't. If a cadet looks really unhappy to be there, which was also the case in this photo, no one was smiling. Sometimes I see pictures where someone in the photo, even if it's not the primary subject, will have their eyes closed. Don't post it. I know I take 5 pictures of Colonel Willis every time. Every time I go click, 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 and I'm like, one of those is going to work. One of them. And usually one of them does. But if you need to look at every single person in the picture. It's something we do at work a lot too. There is the primary leader of our department we constantly look at every photo of her. Like, is this an actual flattering photo? Does she look mad? Are her eyes closed? Is her mouth open in a weird, strange way? Then don't use the photo. If they look unhappy to be there, that's not a good photo. Don't post it. But can anyone else tell me what's wrong with this picture? Anyone? The squadron commander was mortified when I called. And I understand how it happens. Things get missed, but can anyone see what do I need to try to like zoom in? Anything?
The cadet holding the water bottle or what looks
That's
like.
not a water bottle, but
Is it a beer can?
It is Coors Light was the sponsor of this event. And do I think the cadet was drinking beer? No, I don't. I mean, it doesn't look like there's beer in that cup, but we have to pay attention to those things. So even though the cadet was likely not drinking beer, right, we have to look at every single thing in the photo. Like we could also look back here and say, okay, was there anything going on back here that we need to be aware of? I don't really see anything. I think most people understand, that that's the way the flag is going to look from this angle, but you should look at everything in the photo and ask yourself, is there anything else wrong? Is there anything else going on in this photo before I post it? A lot of times what's wrong in the photo is what's happening in the background, not necessarily the actual main subject of the photo. Okay, and then lastly, if you want someone to look over something, I don't want to approve every single post. I really don't. That's actually would be really quite exhausting, would be a lot of work, and you would never post anything because it would be really hard to get a hold of me because I would never have time to be able to say every single day that's good or it's not good. But if you wanted to ask about very particular posts or you had particular questions, I reach out to Colonel Willis and I'm like, hey, is this allowed? Can we do a color guard event with this particular flag? And the answer is actually no. No, we were not allowed to do a color guard event with that particular flag because it was not a government entity or, it was not a state flag or the Air Force flag or the CAP flag. So the answer is no, we could not. And so I do like to ask questions. I just try really hard not to overwhelm him with questions and try to go through your appropriate chain of command first. What questions should I be asking of Major Davidson as my chief of staff before I ask Colonel Willis? What can go to the vice commanders beforehand? For you all, what definitely needs to go through your group commanders. If you've got a public affairs question, go ahead and ask me. I don't feel that you need your group commander's permission to ask me a simple public affairs question. So you can ask, but here's what I want to ask of you is when you ask me and Lieutenant Holberton, she's the assistant PAO, because if we don't both get it, there is a chance whether I'm traveling for work or I'm just extremely busy and we've tried really hard to commit to, you're going to hear back from someone within 24 to 48 hours. And those of you who have emailed me are already laughing at the idea that I have gotten back to you in 48 hours. If it's a press release, I'm really quick. I don't like to make the media wait. But if it's anything else, sometimes it takes me a little bit longer because there's just a lot going on. And so if you email us both, then we will reply all so that we know somebody got to your question within that 48-hour time frame that we're trying to hit. And we're trying to do it faster than that. So when there's more than one of us, it's a little bit easier. And then also, and I feel like I've been really good about this, I've been doing one-on-one 30-minute conversations with the squadron. So if you just need help registering your social media account, or if you need help with, hey, what social media platforms are we allowed to have? And the simple answer to that is Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Those are the ones that you're allowed to have. If you have any other questions about any others, go ahead and reach out. But if you have questions, you just want me to run through your social media. If you've heard there's something wrong with your social media, I have a list of every squadron social media account and what needs to be fixed. I've given that list over to the chief of staff, who I think is working with the vice commanders and maybe the group commanders. But if you have questions about, I don't understand why that's problematic, go ahead and schedule 30 minutes. I will spend the time and we will jump on a call and we'll walk through it together. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask if there are any questions at all or comments, thoughts, concerns, while Colonel Willis is here to take on all your thoughts and concerns. Colonel Powers.
I mean, this is a kind of a serious high level question, but what are the purposes that you would see for posting these types of accounts? Because I mean, I can think of marketing or recruitment or encouragement, but I'm sure there must be more that I'm just not aware of. And then the flip side of that, of course, is what are things that are not valid purposes that you would consider for posting?
For me, the number one thing is actually not recruiting, it's building trust. To be able to build trust with our audience and show them that this is what we do with the time, money, effort, the cadets that they entrust with us. So to me, building trust is actually the number one thing. And sometimes building trust means posting serious stuff when needed. And to get your serious content to be taken seriously and looked at, you can't be serious all the time. You've got to put in some humor and put in some engaging posts, and you've got to have a little bit of fun with it. One, because if you don't, nobody's going to look at it, especially cadets. But two, because that's how you get their attention when you do need to say something really serious. I'll give you a great example. In Japan, they saw the Marine Corps base there in Okinawa saw a major uptick of views at 2 a.m. Does anyone know what is happening at 2 a.m. in Japan with Marines? Like, what are they doing at 2 a.m.? It's okay not know the answer. I didn't know the answer either. That's when the bars close. And so they realized that Marines were pulling out their phones while hopefully, right, waiting for an Uber or a ride from the bar. They were pulling out their phones and they were checking out the Marine Corps headquarters social media page. So that's when they started posting and scheduling posts for, hey, did you call an Uber? Did you get a Lyft? Have you called a buddy for a ride? That's when they were posting those kind of things, because that's when they saw a big spike in engagement. So if you hadn't built the trust and the fun with the Marines, they would not have paid any attention at 2 o'clock in the morning. But then also, I just like public affairs and recruiting too. So there's that. Any other questions?
There's another one in the chat. I know this was mentioned during previous training, so I wanted to comment on it. We are not allowed to Photoshop when posting, correct?
That's correct. Unless you are specifically stating that something is created by AI or that it is Photoshop. So I will go ahead and admit that I had a uniform issue at an event a few months ago. By the way, Bella says hello. I don't know if you can hear her. Pause for 2 seconds. Okay, that was longer than 2 seconds, but I couldn't get them to stop, so I'm just going to move into another room. I had a uniform issue, and so I was not able to post a photo of my promotion. And so I ended up fixing that issue through Photoshop and only used that one post on my own personal Facebook page, to which I think I also made the comment and stated that this had been fixed. On official accounts, you are really not supposed to. I don't know that there's a CAP regulation. I know there's a DoD regulation against it. So incorrect ribbons, major rank issues, major uniform issues, completely photoshopping, non-minor things like, sometimes cadets are going through teenage years and they're very self-conscious about their skin. Fixing some lighting issues and blurring something a little is not the same as completely changing out someone's rank because they wore the wrong uniform. But in the DoD world, they have very strong regulations against it, and I don't do it, and we don't really have time to do it. Amy Bright. I can't remember. Amy, I apologize. I can't remember if it's Lieutenant Bright.
Captain.
It's Captain,
Thank you.
just because it took me a long time to earn it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well earned.
Do you mean, can we crop them? Is that
Oh,
okay?
absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
you absolutely can. We're talking
Changing the
someone's-
picture.
Yeah, changing someone's uniforms, from a staff sergeant to a general, or adding a bunch of ribbons, or whatever the case is. And usually it's not a nefarious purpose. Somebody just wore the wrong uniform. But completely photoshopping their uniform is you don't really have time. It doesn't usually look the same. You have to be a real expert in Photoshop to get that right. It's better to just have them fix their uniform and retake the picture if you can. But I mean, the thing right now is AI is a big thing. And there are a lot of people asking, is it ethical to use a picture that is created by AI? And you'll now see that Facebook and Instagram both require you to push that button that says created by artificial intelligence when you post something, if it was created by AI.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, a lot of departments and organizations are having the what is ethical when it comes to artificial intelligence use. My department at work is having that conversation right now. What is going to be the department policy on the use of AI? And we don't have an answer yet.
Yeah, and understand the ethical aspect of altering a photo. Most people look at a photo and assume that that's what was. And so we've entered into a world, like it or not, we're here, where we can realistically alter photographs to the point where it's undetectable. Yeah, the whole idea of the UFO fuzzy picture, why was focus not invented before any UFO, that type of thing. It's it's a very tenuous step that we're taking in our overall digital ethics. My ask of you is, again, to Captain Bright's question, well, what about cropping? Yeah, that's definitely not limited to Photoshop. But when we're talking about generic photoshopping, that brings in that whole AI aspect. And if you're unaware, Photoshop does now have automatic AI integration, and so it can do things. I don't know if anybody's seen there's a Samsung camera commercial where a guy takes a picture of himself jumping up and then actually takes the photo and manipulates it to make it look like he jumped up like another 2 foot. All right. And yes, it was for artistic purposes in that particular case, but that also implies that he did something he didn't. And so just be very careful on that. Nobody's going to sit there and look for watermarks, but just be careful.
And then even on cropping, the only time you're going to have an issue with cropping is when it changes the story, when it makes it a different truth. So if there was someone in that photo that probably should not have been, and you're intentionally trying to crop them out and leave them out, and now you've changed the truth of the photo. Cropping out somebody because their eyes are closed, I have done that. But, cropping someone out because you want to try and pretend it wasn't Colonel Willis, but, I just look for another one. But cropping out, to try to pretend like you weren't at a fundraising event for a political donor, for example, but you were. Right now, you changed the truth of the photo. So it really, that's the purpose of it, is don't change the truth of a photo. Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining. I appreciate that you have an interest in this, and we're all going to keep working at it together. So let us know if you have questions, reach out to us, and I will let Colonel Willis have the final good night, and we'll get the recording posted.
No, again, I appreciate everybody taking the time. This is something that we want to make sure that we get those pictures and that social media outreach out, because it does mean a lot. And I know it doesn't feel like we're enabling you to be as creative or as free to communicate out, but it is super important to do it this way, and we are here to help. So thank you for your time and your attention. And thank you, ma'am, for doing this.
Absolutely. Everyone have a great night. We'll talk soon.